sitting here at 15 Perry Street. My name is Robert Gowan. I'm the host of the Mentors for Military podcast, and I'm joined by my sidekick this weekend is going to be Kyle Neal.
How are you guys?
So we have a special guest here, but what I do want to do is point out that people can help support the podcast by going out to our Patreon page, and that's patreon.com/mentors, the number 4 MIL, if you want to help support the podcast. In addition to that, you can follow us on all the social media. Make sure you give us good 5-star rating, notes, and everything on there about how great we are would be terrific. That way people can find us whenever they're out there looking at it. So again, it's Mentors, the number 4 MIL. So we're joined in the studio by Alan Mack. Now, Alan Mack is a former 160th SOAR pilot, and we're going to get into that story. But from the very beginning, where is it that you originated from here in the States?
Well, let's see, Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
So you're still in so you went back home then?
Well, to the Northeast.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm in New York now.
Okay. So at what point was it that you decided that the military was what you wanted to do?
When I was really little.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Parents in the military or something?
My dad was a draftee, 2 years. Yeah. But the Vietnam War was going on, and every night at 5 o'clock on the news, you saw, Hueys flying in and planes dropping bombs. I was like, that's what I'm doing. And everybody said, you don't want to do that. It's a dead end job. So I was supposed to go to college and decided I wasn't ready. I knew I would just party and not study. And so I joined the Army, and of course I go into the recruiter and I say, hey, I'd like to fly helicopters. He's like, hey, that's great, kid, but it's not that easy, right? So how about you join in Army Aviation, and you do that a couple of years, you get it under your belt, and then put in for it. It's a lot easier. And that's a typical recruiter spiel, but it was true.
Yeah.
And I did 9 years as a helicopter mechanic, and worked on Cobras, OH-58s, and Hueys.
Nice.
So this is what year?
So 1981.
Okay. So, wow, you're back like old school to me, because I came in 1980.
Yeah.
What was your first duty station then?
First duty station was Korea.
Okay. Oh, God.
Camp Stanley.
Who did you upset?
Wow.
My whole class went to Korea.
Oh, it was one of those types of deals. Okay. Yeah. They had a name for that back then. I forget what it was, where they would take the whole thing. You weren't one of those where the drill sergeant and everything, right?
No.
Like on stripes?
No, they just sent all the AIT students to Korea.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
We were all scattered around the country.
Where'd you go after Korea?
Fort Bliss, Texas.
Man.
Wow, you really made some money, man.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure.
No offense to Fort Bliss.
No, you're right. And so I met my first wife there, or really my late wife.
Yeah.
And we went to Germany after that. We did 4 years in Mannheim.
Mannheim.
Yeah.
Ever run any? When were you there in Germany?
85 to 89.
After I had left, did you ever run any border trace or anything at that time frame? No.
I was an aircraft mechanic, so I just...
Yeah. Oh, you were always on the ground. You never got crew chief and that type of thing. Yeah. Oh, that's unfortunate. So when was it you started hearing about the 160th, or when did you start wanting to go into flight school? I guess maybe it was what led you to that. So you didn't do 160th any SOF at any point prior to going to flight school?
No.
Oh, no. Wow.
And as a matter of fact, when I was leaving Germany, I decided I was going to probably ETS. I was going to get out of the Army. And I decided I would put in for flight school. And if I got picked up, I'd stay. And if not, I'd get out. And in the meantime, I put in for the 160th as an enlisted guy. I was going to go be an aircraft mechanic for them. And I'd written a letter to the sergeant major and sent, whatever I had to do back then. And got picked up for flight school.
Nice.
In 89.
So you went to Mother Rucker.
Yeah.
While there, what was it that near the end of that they were kind of leaning you towards flying, or did you get your choice?
No, I did not get my choice, although I was happy with it.
Yeah.
So back in 89, 90, I was in a class of like 75 guys, and I don't know, probably 30 of us, maybe 50 were Hueys. And then you had 8 Blackhawks, 9 Cobras, and whatever's left for 58s or something like that. And I like that because I wanted to do assault. And then, unfortunately, or actually fortunately for me, the Army was getting short Chinook pilots, right? Because they were all very senior. To fly Chinooks back then, you had to be a senior W3 or W4. W5s didn't exist. And typically it was for going to Vietnam. Then you get that as a prize, and you go back flying Chinooks instead of Hueys. So
you made it. Here you go.
Yeah. But the problem is they all retired about the same time, right? So next thing they could do is take W1s, which were unheard of at the time. So the only thing they could do, the only metric they had to whether you were any good or not, was your grade point average.
Oh,
really?
So, yeah.
That's what it was based off of.
Yeah. So I was lucky enough to be number one, and my stick buddy was number 2, and we got picked up for Chinooks, and I was pissed. I mean, this is something I should. No one mentored me, right?
Yeah.
Said, hey, this is a good thing for you, right? And I'm like, I want to do assaults.
Yeah.
I don't want to haul cargo from airport to airport, right? It's going to be boring. And I went and flew it. Got qualified in it. I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. It's nice. And I went to Savannah, Georgia. It was my first assignment as a pilot. And I got there, and Saddam invaded Kuwait, like that week that I was checking in.
It got real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we did have, so I was in Savannah, Georgia at Hunter Army Airfield, and right next door to us in the hangar was a third of the 160th. And a lot of the pilots there knew our pilots because they'd all been to Korea, at some point or other. Korea was like the great mixing ground for Chinook pilots. There's only one place to go, it was Camp Humphreys, and you were either an innkeeper or a black cat, and I was a black cat.
What's the difference for those? Because I'm not familiar with this term.
Well, it's just the names of the unit, but
black cat because of the patch.
Right.
Yeah.
So the difference is the black cats were better.
For those wondering.
Yeah. Of course, my innkeeper buddies, they had so we had a black cat with his back hunched up, and Walt Disney actually did the design for it, and then the innkeepers had an arrow pointed up on the aft pylon of the aircraft, and that was so if it crashed, you knew which side to keep up. Yeah,
That's hilarious. So Disney did the design for that?
Yeah.
How did that get coordinated? Do you know the story behind that?
No, I think he did them for a lot of military units, in Vietnam.
Had no idea. Did you know that?
I had no idea. That's something I'm to look into.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I don't know that I've ever heard that story. I always just kind of thought that was probably some, I don't know if they even termed it graphic artist back in the day, but some person that was assigned within the military to come up with a design, and then it was put forward, or you saw some that looked like it came from, it had symbolism of some ways where they probably were an individual that played Dungeons and Dragons, it seemed like, or something, where you got different.
That is what happened later on. Like the current design is a much cooler looking, like a panther, kind of thing. And Disney's was a cat, like from.
It wasn't ferocious enough, I guess.
No, but when they changed it, the older guys, because what would happen is you'd go back to the States to Fort Campbell, Fort Hood, or Savannah. Those were the big places you can brag, the big places to go in Chinooks. And then you'd do that for 3 or 4 years, and then you'd have to go to Korea for a year and come back. And the older guys would come back and they, what the hell are you guys doing changing the logo? Walt Disney did that, and they had big fights. But they ended up changing it.
Yeah. So you had 3rd and 160th there in the hangar with you, and you guys ran some of the same circles. You had already thought about going 160th as a mechanic and everything. So this was your great opportunity to learn more. And did you get a chance to really network to decide if that's what you wanted to do before you put in the packet, or how did that end up going?
No, not at that point. So at that stage of the game, I'm just a W01, right? I'm a little Woj. And, Woj, empty the trash. Woj, get me a Coke. But the thing was, in order to go overseas with everybody, to not end up as a liaison like an LNO, I had to be what they call Readiness Progression Level 1, RL1. So they put all their effort into training me just to be a basic co-pilot, because when you get to your unit, you got to get checked out and they make sure, especially when you're W1, it's like, all right, what does this guy actually know?
Yeah.
And they got to erase some of the rucker stuff. And we ended up flying our aircraft up to Wilmington, North Carolina to be put on a ship, right? And they...
A ship.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 16 Chinooks and a Huey. We flew up there, and they tore them down, put them on a ship, and sent them over to Saudi Arabia. And in the meantime, they still had to train me, so they had a deal with the 160th, and they let us use one of their Chinooks to train me up. So that was kind of neat. It was a very bare bones. It's what they call a warbird. It just had, like extra radios or something. There was nothing special about it other than that. Oh. But so I went out, got trained up, and then we flew over to Dhahran, and we did what was called Desert Express for Desert Shield, right? So we would, stuff would come in on a C-130, we'd fly over, pick it up, and it was all like emergency stuff, tank transmissions and treads and whatever they needed. And we would just fly those up and back. And the cool thing for me was nobody liked to fly night vision goggles, right? The old guys hated it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, back then they sucked.
Well, they did. And
so you're rocking like the PVS 7 Bravos.
Yeah.
These were 5s.
Okay, so 2 and then 1, and you had the Skull Crusher on.
Well, these were they were a full face goggle.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That somebody had took like a Dremel tool and cut the bottom off it, and then you flip it upside down, and the lip would fit up inside your visor for the helmet. And then you had surgical tubing and weight bags, and it was the guy that did it, the story goes, he almost got an Article 15 for ruining a $15,000 set of goggles. But it became the Army's way, right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
But everybody hated the damn things. I mean, the visual acuity was like, I don't know.
On a scale of 1 to 10, like about a 0.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
1.5.
Yeah, they were bad.
Yeah.
Especially on a dark night, But so here I am, the W1, and they got to do this flying at night, and all of the W4s are like, take the Woj. He'll go. He doesn't know any better. And I'm like, yeah, this is great. And so I built all kinds of night vision goggle time and experience in the desert that these other guys wouldn't do, And as a matter of fact, we lost our commander and our standardization instructor pilot. The war had ended, like the ceasefire happened. We flew up north to pick up a bunch of prisoners of war, Iraqis. And we flew them back into Saudi Arabia to some prison. I can't remember where it was. And then it was along the Tapline Road, which is this east-west running road on the northern border between Iraq and Saudi Arabia. And so it's nighttime, and there's 5 aircraft, and only 2 of us put on goggles. One other crew had goggles and didn't put them on. That was our commander. And they just felt like they could it was easier to go unaided down to, our camp. And they hit an unlit tower that the rest of us avoided because we couldn't see it. That was the problem. I was like, there's supposed to be a tower over here and I can't see it. Let's just offset. And so we flew by it and they didn't offset. And they just ran smack dab into it.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah. So that just proved how night flying was so much more dangerous, for these older guys. So when we got back from Desert Storm, the Army had realized night fighting was the thing, right? So every exercise we went on, whether it was NTC, JRTC, Sand Eagle, all these things, you had to have goggle crews. But of the 16 ship company, there was only like 4 goggle crews, and I was one of them. So I was gone all the time,
So the depth perception was absolutely horrendous in that thing.
Yeah, there's none.
Yeah, and you probably did some, Mojave Desert time out there and stuff, and Fort Irwin. But it was at this time frame was one of the first time periods, I think, where we're really using the night vision goggles in this way. I would assume a lot more, and then having to put up with the challenges of the sand, the dust, and everything with your engine components.
Yeah. The sand just eats it up. And, the goggles were so bad back then that you'd come back at the end of the night at NTC, right? And you come in and you kind of slam into the ground, almost a little crash. And once you stopped, you'd stomp on the brakes and stop and ooh, we made it. We still have our landing gear, and you shut the aircraft down. And the next day you come out to do the pre-flight inspection, and you'd see like a big boulder or a ditch, inches from your landing gear. It's like, oh my God, I didn't see that. We were this close to having a damaged aircraft.
I was, when I went to Fort Irwin, prior to like Desert Storm and everything, when I went to Fort Irwin, it was, I was in armor, and it was M60s and stuff that we used. Not that big of a deal. Fast forward, and you go and you're, on an M1, which with a turbine engine, and it's a very similar type of situation. Right. They just were not designed at that time period. They hadn't really had that type of experience and exposure. You get the occasional going to Fort Irwin, maybe pulling out an M1 or something, but not to the level I don't think that it was back then with the debris, the sand, and the damage that it was taking. It was taking a toll, serious toll on a lot of vehicles. But it really set the stage and allowed us to prepare for those future battles.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although, the one thing that the Army in general, Army aviation, found out is not all deserts are equal. Right.
Good point.
The NTC desert, right, Fort Irwin, it's sort of a gravelly, rocky with some brush, and there's we talked about the goggles not having depth perception.
Yep.
So you use what they call monocular cues, which are things like the known size of an object. You say, oh, that's a bush over there. That's probably 3 feet. I know how high I am. That kind of stuff. But then you go to Saudi Arabia, and the dunes are smooth. Right, and they have a second lip, so they come up and they go in a couple of feet, and then they come up again, right? And you can see the bottom lip, but you can't see the top one because it's sort of in the shade. And the Army ripped off I don't know how many landing gear in that during Desert Shield, right? To the point where what we had to do was they set a hard deck of 150 feet above the ground, on your radar altimeter, and you had to have a guy in the jump seat, which is the little seat behind the two pilots, and he would just watch the altimeter, and if you got low, he was the voice warning system. He'd say, "You're too low. Pull up."
Wow.
Nowadays that's all automated, but
yeah. No, and I'm listening to this, and I can totally visualize it because when you're flying through there and stuff. It's a wonder though that some of these landing gears that were ripped off didn't cause a nosedive, or did it? No. You didn't lose any aircraft.
No, they just shear off.
Shear. Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's like a safety mechanism or something, or.
It was like, oh, okay, it's we're too low.
Unintentional.
How was that coming back in and landing the bird then without the landing gear?
Well, no Chinooks had that. It was all Hueys and Blackhawks.
Yeah.
So I think the Blackhawk was like a tail wheel, and the Hueys were a set of skids.
Okay.
And an OH-58 and a Cobra.
Wait, Hueys were losing skids?
Yeah.
Because when you said landing gear, I was thinking more probably,
skids.
The wheel.
Poof, shear right off.
Again, I would think that you'd hit something, the skid would shear, but I would think that would cause other effects.
Well, I think if you were going slower, you probably could, but going fast like that's just like 4 bolts, on either side of the skids. It's just a U channel.
Yeah.
Like skids just sit in there. So they're just kind of hanging there, and the bolts just keep them from falling off.
Why were you guys flying at like nap of the earth and so low?
Because that's what we thought we had to do.
Okay.
So, surface to air stuff was definitely like inflated at that point.
Yeah,
like they have these capabilities, so we got to do this.
Right. So that's the thing, right? That's what happened in Desert One, right, with the Iranian hostage crisis. The 53s flew at like 400 feet in this sandstorm, and the C-130s flew at 4,000 feet, right, the same path, because they knew there was no radar out there, and the helicopter pilots said, we got to stay low. That's what we do. And they flew in this sandstorm without being able to see. But, the Army was the same way. And the other thing is with the night vision goggles, if you get up higher, there is no texture to pick up. So you want to fly as low as you can to see the texture of the ground, because that helps you with your height, and speed.
Yeah, it'll help with depth perception at that. You can start seeing contours and stuff a little bit better.
Yeah. And that was the problem with Saudi, is that it was so smooth, right? But then as you progress north into Iraq, it was a little more like NTC, but not as craggy. It's kind of flat, but you did have some scrub and some rocks and things like that. So it was a little easier to fly there.
I guess I never really realized that looking at the night vision goggles and trying to keep that depth perception and stuff, and how critical of what you're describing is, but then again, I do remember these terrible night vision goggles, and I could see the need for it for sure. Because I mean, even in the vehicles, the night vision goggles sucked at that time frame.
Yeah,
they were the same quality. Really,
it was the same set, the fives, right?
Yeah,
ADS fives. Because I drove a Jeep and then a Cuck V, sort of a Blazer, with the full face on. And no one gave me a class. It was just.
Oh, no one ever did that, right? Did you?
Mac, take the platoon leader up to check on the FARP. All right, yes, sir. And he'd be, are you sure you can see the road? I'm like, oh, yes, sir.
Good night.
We got the blackout drive on.
Blackout drive, yeah. I was going to ask you, did you have a blackout drive on? Yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah, so how many hours did you end up flying while over there then?
In Desert Shield and Storm, probably 600 or 700, which is a lot for over there, because a lot of guys just sat around during Desert Shield because they didn't want to fly.
Yeah.
And the idea was that Desert Shield was a defensive operation, so you don't have to do anything, right? Then, of course, you just change the name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And boom.
Yeah, so did you get any other type of experience other than the night vision and the 600 hours? I mean...
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, it was, it was a co-pilot, and we went up, so we were way out west, like the big left hook that they talk about, Schwarzkopf's left hook, the fake. So we go up and establish FOB Cobra, which is a big series of refueling and arming points, right? So we're, flights of 5 Chinooks, and there's got to be 100 of us, maybe more. I think it might have been 150 Chinooks, just going up there, dropping stuff off, and then the Cobras and Apaches would come in, pick up the armament, go out and do their thing, and the artillery guys would come get their stuff and their gas. And they did that in the daylight because it would have been catastrophic at night. And I can guarantee that, and especially in hindsight now, it's like, yeah, we weren't ready for that at night.
What was your split then between daylight and nighttime of those 600 hours?
For me, I probably had about 150 hours a night, because they tried not to fly at night if they could help it.
It's so different now. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's a night stalker. So I was at Fort Rucker one time with some friends of mine that were with DES, the Directorate of Evaluation and Standards. And we're at lunch, and the guy says, so Al, how many goggle hours you got? I said, about 4,000. And he's like, no, not total time, goggle time. I'm like, no, it is my goggle time. And I'm closer to 7,000 hours without.
Oh my God!
And they're like, oh my God! I'm like, Night Stalker.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of the point.
Yeah, I mean, because so we flew at night. I mean, all the time. Barely in the daytime. Usually in the 160th, the daytime flights were more like a rehearsal for like a.
Yeah.
You ratchet up the complexity. So you always start out in the daylight. You try it. You wait for the sun to go down. You go back and do it again, and that's what we did.
So after Desert Storm, go back to Stewart, or
yeah. So I was back at Stewart, and that's what I was doing. All those exercises like JRTC, Sand Eagle, all that stuff.
Yeah.
As a goggle crew member, and then came the dreaded. You're going to Korea. As a pilot.
Once you get on that rotation,
it seems like your name stays there.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, everybody had to do it, and it was kind of one of those. Actually, it was a great assignment. I mean, I had a wife and 2 kids, so that part sucked. But the mixing of guys from Fort Campbell, guys from Fort Hood, guys from Fort Bragg and Savannah, it's like, well, we don't do it that way at Bragg. No, you don't. But that's how we're doing it here.
It's always Bragg. It's always Bragg. You don't do it like that at Bragg. It's like, I get it, but
there's more stories. We'll probably hit later on. Overseas. In Afghanistan or Iraq. When the 101st would have the FARP, the Forward Army Refueling Point, and then they leave, and the 82nd would take it over, and they would change the direction or how it's done.
They'd reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, and you get yelled at every time you go in there. It's like, wait, you're supposed to be parked this way. And it's like, well, I was here last night. What'd you do? But, so I go to Korea, and that was a year unaccompanied assignment. And that's where I sort of started transitioning as a pilot, in that I wanted to be an instructor pilot, an IP. and I was still pretty junior. I was a CW2, and they let me be a no-fly line unit trainer, so a UT, right? So I would teach guys how to fly along the border. I had to have the whole length of the country, east to west, memorized. And I would have to, the instructor would sit at the table with my map. Everybody had a book map, right, that you had to make. And I'd say, okay, on this page, you're gonna turn left around the little knoll up the creek bed, and good, and then you go do it. And, you fly while the other guy is following on the map, and you just kind of tell him what is going on. And it was a great experience because we had this, a CW5 came over, a guy named Jake Stevens. He's a legend in the community. And I was giving him his buffer zone qualification. So we're going up into, beyond that no-fly line, up into, Camp Liberty Bell, where they have the DMZs on the painted on the ground, that kind of stuff. And as I was going up there, I was saying something along the lines of, okay, we'll turn left here. We're going to fly as low as possible, commensurate with our speed. We get 200 meters left and right, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, who taught you how to do that? To talk like that. It's called MOI. And I said, I just did it. I read the regulation and spit it back out. And he says, you need to be an instructor pilot. So he pulled some strings and with DA and Department of the Army, and he got me assigned to Fort Rucker. I was supposed to go back to Hunter, but if I wanted to be an IP, I had to go back and stay at Rucker. And so I did that. And at that time, my wife had some depression problems, and she had attempted suicide while I was over there. So I thought, maybe the Rucker thing would be a good deal, right? So no deployments, no training exercises. So we did that, and she loved it, and I hated it.
I was going to ask you because it's such a different lifestyle, not to mention that, you're dealing with trainee, pilots and stuff. And I would imagine the aircraft is probably just not that desirable. It's not what you're used to in probably the standard Army. It's more designed for training purposes. So
I was bored silly. I had my first two set of students were great.
Yeah.
They were just amazing and a lot of fun. And then
they ruined it for everything.
Well, then what happened is the National Guard there in Alabama changed over from CH-54 Sky Cranes to Chinooks, and they didn't want to, the pilots, right? So they came in to get their transition from young CW2 Alan Mack, and they're all W4s and, had been to Vietnam, and they loved the 54 and they hated the Chinook, and they just took it out on me. Like it's my fault that they're there, right? And, I'd be like, all right, what's the emergency procedure for this? And they would just give me some wise-ass answer. I was like, come on, guys, And I hated it. And then they gave me foreign students, which were good, Singapore, Australia, and some Dutch. And they were good, but they were better than me. Like these guys to come, they had like aerodynamics degrees and all this other stuff, so I couldn't really teach them anything. And so it wasn't any fun. And then a buddy of mine who went through the instructor pilot course with me had come back for another course, and he threw an application on my desk. He's like, Al, we need you up there, Fort Campbell. Come on, let's go. And I'm like, I don't know. Better guys than me have not made it, right? But the thing is, you don't know why they didn't make it.
Yeah. Right.
Right? I mean, they just, those guys were jerks, they didn't take me. And it's like, yeah, well, maybe his finances are no good or, stuff you might not know. But I filled it out by hand, right? Back then, the computers still weren't a big deal.
Yeah.
And so I just started filling it out, a little at a time. And when it was full, I said, I put it in. And like 2 weeks later, I got a call from the 160th recruiter. He's like, hey, Mr. Mack, how'd you like to assess? Come up, try out. I was like, okay. So I went up and I made it.
That's awesome.
Well, that's the short version. It has to be the short version because they are very heavy in how they scrutinize the applications to get to that point.
I can't remember the percentages, but it's like of the submitted applications, like only 75% of them make the first cut, just along the desks. And then you get down to, 50 or 40% actually come up to assess, and of those only 25%, do it. Now, obviously those numbers have changed, come and go, but I was there close to 17 years.
So this was 94 time period, maybe?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to remember back at that time frame. I was still at Benning at that time frame. So in 94, 160th had been around for what, only about 6-7 years or something like
1980.
that? 1980. I didn't think that they started that early. Okay.
Yeah, because you had the 1979 Eagle Claw.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. And then the 160th was formed to join with Delta, right? Because Delta existed, and then they put this ad hoc task force together, which was the problem. I mean, that's a whole...
Yes, I remember that whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But so the 160th was formed for Operation Honey Badger, which was the second attempt, but they released them before it ever happened. And once the Iranians let the hostages go, I think it was, may have been General Meyer was the chief of staff of the Army. I might be wrong on that, but whoever that was said, we're not disbanding this. You're going to maintain this capability. And that's when the 160th was formed.
Okay, I thought there was a larger gap in between that time frame, so that's very interesting. So, okay, my bad. It's been around for a period of time. By this time frame, they probably refined their selection a little bit better. But I mean, today, the scrutiny and how they get people in and stuff is really tight as well, because everybody's now heard about it.
Yeah.
Back then, you kind of heard about it. You got a chance to run circles. You're in the same hangar,
Right.
But now more people hear about it. Obviously, the volume of applications is probably much larger. So how many people ended up going through selection at the same time frame? And did you go in with the flight crews and everybody? Were you all in the same, or how did that go?
Yeah. Well, when it comes to assessment, you just go up individually, and you start you out with the regular Army PT test. And the funny story with that is they give you very bare bones information. PT test 6 a.m. Like, what do I wear? Like Army PT yet? So this is special ops. Do you wear something different? And so I wore civilian, running shorts and a shirt. And I was like, other guys saw me like, you're gonna show up like that? I'm like, yeah. Screw those guys if they don't want me, right? Yeah. That's what I said.
Yeah.
Inside, I'm thinking, I better bring the other one, right? So I left it in the car, and I got up. They didn't say anything to me. And, what's funny is years later, I talked to one of the recruiters, like, hey, when it comes to this, is that a big deal? I'm like, yeah, actually it is. And, a guy that shows up like that, he's already got the mindset,
Yeah.
at least when it comes to that.
Yeah.
And then they don't count any of the iterations, push-ups, sit-ups, and all that stuff. You do pull-ups, which is not normal for the Army. And then they run you down to the Cav Country pool, and you jump in with all your flight gear on. They provide it. And you got to swim, the length of the pool, different strokes. And you swim back, and then you got to get out and jump in, deep water entry, and then swim a length that you don't know, right? And they don't tell you. So you're like swimming, and you come up, I can't go any further. I got out, and the guy says, hey, sir, did you get to go twice? And I'm like, twice? I don't even know if I made it the first time. So I get over there, and I jump in, and I do it, and I swim thinking I'm going to just black out this time. I'm not coming up. And finally, I'm swimming a stroke, and somebody taps on my helmet. I was like, oh, I made it. And I found out the same thing with that is they were looking for not so much that you did it, because they figured they'll teach you to swim if you can't swim, right? But could you jump back in the water, or
could you do it again after you're smoked, or you're gonna black out?
Yeah. And they knew that I was spent, and I did it anyway. And they're, yep, that's what we want. We don't want you to quit. Night Stalkers don't quit.
Yeah. No, I love that. And that's actually some of the things that you hear a lot through selection. People contact us all the time and say, hey, can you guys talk a little bit more about it? Well, that's the whole purpose, is that you're supposed to go there a little blind and not know what's expected.
Yeah, and that's the problem with SEER school, right? Is that the what do they call it? SEER level C, high risk of evasion, capture, whatever. That's at Fort Bragg, right? And they do it at Rucker now too, but everybody kind of has the intel on that. Oh, they're going to make you do this and do this. And it's to your detriment to hear that, because they know that, and they just don't do it that way. They always change it up enough that you think And then you get deflated. Oh, that's not what I thought. They really are going to keep us here for 7 more days, you know?
Yeah. Then your mind probably starts playing tricks on you.
Right. And then I went to another SEER school that is a little more secretive, and they don't tell you anything about it other than wear comfortable shoes. And that's all I'm going to say.
That's a giveaway automatically right there.
That's pretty ominous right there, yeah.
But you finish up the assessment. You do like a couple of written psychology tests, a general aviation knowledge test, threat assessments and things like that. And then you talk with a psychiatrist, right? And they so I had the wife with the suicide attempt, and I thought that was going to derail me. It's like, oh, you're going to be gone all the time. She was doing better, obviously. And they never brought it up in the board, right? And I'll tell you about that in a second. So then you get your navigation target, which is some grass field somewhere that's unlit. And you got to plan, about a 2-hour route, just map and compass, and clock. And you got to hit plus or minus 30 seconds. And I tell you, flying that kind of route in Kentucky and Tennessee, it's all flat. Mm-hmm. It does not look the same. And you can't handrail roads. You can't, nothing. You got to be, it's all clock and compass. And they can tell if you're not. And nobody ever passes. Even if you're good enough to pass, you won't pass because they'll do something that puts you out of standards. Maybe they just fly out of trim for a little bit and screw up your time.
Is it really just to see how you're going to react to that? Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, first of all, they want to know, number one, can you navigate? But they're going to teach you how to navigate the way they want you to anyway. So it doesn't matter if you're any good or not. It matters when you get lost, do you freak out, right? Because when you can tell when a guy starts turning his map like a bus driver in a dragging wheel. He's like, trying to orient the map to the ground. Yeah. I was like, driving the bus, huh? Where are we? I don't know. And then they put you through the board, right? Which is job interview on steroids, right? So there's the regiment commander, the battalion commander of the battalion that's going to get you, the SHRANK, the recruiter, the S1, the personnel guy, and they just grill you and try to get you to cry. And I have made people cry on the other end of the table, and I've, but the whole time I was waiting for them to say something about my wife, and they never did. So when they would hit me with something that they thought was like really mean, and this will get him, I'm like, ooh, they didn't ask about the wife. And so I went through just, they couldn't get to me, because they didn't use that weapon.
And I was just getting ready to say that was the one thing that you had feared the most. And had they asked you, you probably had some kind of prepared statement in your head of how you were going to respond to that and everything else. So it's funny the way you're describing that, because everything else outside of that was a blessing for you. You were looking at this as, all right, as long as we keep flying under that radar, man, I'm good. But if they asked me this question, that would have been the opportunity. They didn't know that was the kryptonite. They didn't know that would have been the challenge for you.
Yeah, and I think so when they accepted me, the shrink comes out afterwards. Yeah. Whether you get accepted or not, the shrink comes out. He says, hey, good job, whatever. And he came up to me and he said, listen, your issue with your wife, we've seen it before. We can deal with it. Don't worry about it. So, nice. So I think he's the one that told them about it, but said just stay away from it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I had enough people that knew me from past assignments or past exercises and such that they wanted me.
Yeah.
They needed me, actually. I mean, they needed a skilled Chinook pilot with enough MVG time to they could train their way.
Yeah.
Because Chinook guys, I mean, honestly, they got a pretty damn good life out there in the big Army. And for the most part, all you can say is, why would you want to do the 160th thing? I mean, most guys won't do it. We had a recruiting drive one time, and the battalion commander made us, because, the 160th is not direct assigned. It's only volunteer, right? And a warrant officer can stay there as long as he wants to stay or is still productive. So, like I said, I was there 16 years and 9 months or something like that.
So you were at 14 at this point then, around 14, right?
Yeah. I mean, I ended up doing 36.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it was like 2 separate careers.
Yeah.
Bless you. 36.
Yeah. Wow. 35 years, 11 months. But who's counting? Right. So
26
I
days,
feel
4
guilty.
hours.
Sometimes I feel guilty saying 36. It's like, no, it's 35 years, 11 months. Whatever.
But at that time frame and everything, you know, you knew what to expect, or you didn't know what to expect at this point. I mean, this is 95. There's nothing really going on at that.
Right. So
you know.
Mogadishu had just happened.
I would say
That, okay,
that's probably the biggest thing in that time period.
oh, because I left in 95, I think, for my next assignment leaving Benny. You're right. It was right around, it just had happened.
Right.
Forgot all about
and so
that.
guys were, you know, who had been there, or obviously.
Were you in Mogadishu?
No.
Then? Okay.
No, I was at Rucker. So I got there. I got to the 160th. I don't know, a couple months after they all got back.
Yeah.
Which was funny because we're at a JRTC, the big one, where you bring the you know, DevGru guys and the CAG and all that stuff. And I wasn't trained up yet. Right? I'm just a basic mission qualified pilot. So they made me the assistant Ranger LNO. Right? There's a guy named Ranger Dothit, RD, right? He's famous in the community, nice guy. And he knew what he was doing. He used to be a Ranger, and he's a captain, and he's doing this thing right now. I'm his assistant. So when he's not, you know, he's out in the field with the guys, I'm, you know, passing information back and forth. And I was told by the pilots, like the flight leads, we are not flying in the day. They're going to want to do it. And it really had more to do with crew endurance. Like the guys had been up late the night before. They wanted at least, you know, 8 hours of rest or whatever before they go back out and do a complex mission in the dark. And the Rangers were like, no, we want them, you know, and the battalion commander ended up being a general. And he looks at me and he goes, Mr. Mack, I want them to fly at, you know, 1400. I was like, no, sir, they will not. And he looks up at me with these cold eyes, and then he looks at my boots, and he looks at my uniform from the feet up to my hair, and he just looks at me, you know, like, really? And I said, well, sir, you know, I could tell right now I was in trouble. And he's like, I believe it's because of, you know, what happened in Mogadishu, which was the wrong thing to say to this guy because he had been there. And he's like, I happen to know that General Daly, you know, is okay with this. And I was like, all right, sir, obviously I stepped out of line. I'm brand new. I apologize. I will take your message back right now. And I went back to my battalion commander and I said, hey, sir, here's what I did. And he goes, don't worry about it. He goes, we're not flying today.
So you were right, at least.
Yeah, I was. But he didn't, you know, I mean, you know, the Rangers, especially Ranger leadership, you know, they're very, you know, they're very firm on what they want from leadership and who's supporting them, and, you know, they deserve it. But, you know, that's the kind of thing that, you know, years later as a flight lead, you know, I used to, my sons both were in the military. One was in the 160th and the other one is still in the Navy, flies F-18s. And I would tell them something along the lines of, you know, anything less than a full bird better not mess with me, right? Because I'm just going to let them have it in both barrels. And it was really blustery. I didn't really mean it. But, you know, I would go toe-to-toe with some very senior people if I was in the right. And the 160th is cool about that because the lunatics kind of run the asylum.
Yes.
The warrant officers are given a goal by the commander, and then they plan it, they brief it, they execute it, at least the first level contingencies. And if there's something more complex, you know, they have a air mission commander or the unit commander with you. So they kind of let you do that. They empower you, you know, and it's a really good feeling. But, you know, my son used that on his first deployment to Syria. And as he told me about it, I was like, dude, I was kidding when I said that. He goes, well, I didn't know that. He could have told me.
How'd it go?
He ended up okay.
Okay,
you know,
that's good.
He was a little bit worried.
Oh,
He's
that
like,
kind of...
Dad, I was giving the captain a hard time, like an Army captain. He's like, no.
A Navy captain?
Navy captain. I'm like, oh, yeah. I said, full birds and above, you do not mess with.
Yeah.
Although I did watch a good friend of mine, we'll just call him Chuck. He was a CW5, and we're doing the Tora Bora campaign, right? So we're doing the cave complexes and stuff. Bin Laden's already kind of got across the border, we think, but we're checking all the caves. And we get this big assault. We think he might be on our side of the border after all, and in this one little building. And the general comes in. He's a C-130 pilot, right, by trade. And he's like, here's what you guys should do. We come up opposite directions, and we get on both sides of the building. And the valleys are, like, just big enough for one Chinook. You can't pass each other. And Chuck looks up at him and goes, sir, that is the stupidest thing I have ever heard. And the general just goes, well, fine, you guys do it. And he walked away. And so this guy Chuck, was kind of one of my mentors.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, wow, that's how you do that. Okay.
Well, I guess if you're totally in the right, I mean, you're talking about taking and, you know, you have men's lives at stake here that you're controlling. The Tora Bora, though, I thought that was, I don't know, I guess I always thought the impression of more of a lot of bomb dropping in that time frame.
Well, there was.
Yeah.
You know, the mountains glowed.
Yes.
With the night vision goggles, you could come up, like even when we weren't dropping bombs, you could see the glowing mountain from a distance.
No lie.
Yeah.
Did you get a point of reference for your night vision?
Oh, it was amazing. You know, the only thing that equates to that is if you fly out west when they've got the big wildfires.
Yeah.
And even though they've put the fire out, the ground is still showing up in your night vision goggles. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, Afghanistan, you know, I was lucky enough to be part of just about every major operation other than the, final fall there, But I think my last combat tour was in 2012. So anything that happened after that, it had nothing to do with it.
Well, let's talk. What happened in between the period? Because I don't want to go too fast, too quickly, or too far too quickly. What before 2001, between 95 and 2001, what was the 160th like at that time frame?
It was great.
Yeah.
I mean, it was everything you'd hope it would be in that, the unit doesn't have any tents, right, for the Army, right? So you stay in hotels, not bad ones. They're always something, a Marriott or a DoubleTree or something like that. And you go and train in the environment. So we would go to Colorado and fly in the mountains and use supplemental oxygen, which is why we were good with that. And then, 10th group would give us ski tickets, right? And we'd go ski for free, right? And so that was that. And then you'd go out to San Diego and work with the SEALs, and they'd, do stuff with you. Or Virginia Beach, you go ride the CACs and the HSACs, the big boat, the cigarette boats that the SEALs have. And you'd air refueling everywhere you went. And it was just a blast.
It had to be. I mean, you're staying at DoubleTree with the chocolate chip cookies that are warm.
The cookies,
holy cow.
No, it was good. We were out in Knoxville one time. We had just fielded the terrain following radar, and we were doing our training out there. And because there's military training routes where you can actually fly without being able to see out the window, filing an IFR flight plan, instrument flight rules. So that was a unique place, and it was 2-hour flight from Campbell. And this retired Army major comes up to us at breakfast, and he's like, "Why are you guys here?" Well, we know he's a retired guy. He's got a hat like this on, and we're trying to make nice with him, and we didn't realize he was a hostile, questioner.
Oh, wow.
So it's the first and only time I've had to use my public affairs guidance, little card. If you have questions, call this number.
Yeah.
And he wanted to know why we weren't in tents. I said, well, we don't own any tents, and we're here doing this thing. And he's like, I can't believe I've never stayed in a hotel in my military career. And he just was livid. And his wife was like, yeah. He stormed off. And I was like, wow, that was something.
Yeah.
But so that's what the 160th was like. And at the time, was it Kosovo, I think, was a big deal.
Yeah.
And there was a guy named Milosevic, was the general over there. And we were trained to go get him, right? Big, penetrating an integrated air defense network, all the Cold War stuff that, we were equipped for. And I can't remember what happened to him. He ended up getting caught or something.
I don't either. It's funny how we don't remember that particular time period and stuff around Kosovo, because it was almost like a blip on the radar.
Yeah.
Between you think about all the conflicts between, I came in and joined in 79, but came to basic and everything, or OSIT in 80. So the Iran hostage crisis was going on into, all the different stuff that were smaller, Panama, Somalia, Desert Storm, and I call Desert Storm being small. We ramped up big, and then it was like over. And then, Kosovo. I'm trying to think of all the different things that happened in that time period, but they were just like a quick, get it done,
right?
Type
and
of
so
thing.
here's the funny thing. Remember, I told you earlier that we had to write letters to prospective, volunteers, right? And I said, the battalion commander asked us to do this. I'm like, no one's going to bite. The people I know that would do it are here already.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were out in the Army with me before, and now they're here. The other guys that are out there that I know are not going to do this, right? And I wrote, a couple of letters. We each had to write 5, and all 5, the ones I wrote, 4 of them politely declined, and the 5th one was a guy who I really didn't want, but he's the only other guy I knew, and he's like, screw you, we're not doing that. Why would I want to do that? I was like,
Double tree cookies.
yeah, double tree. Right.
Yeah, we don't stay in tents.
Right. I mean, that's a pretty cool. And and generally, if you deploy somewhere, the idea is you go do your job and come back.
Yeah.
And so I told the battalion commander, a guy named Andy Milani, a great guy, and he goes, "Al, what do you think?" And I go, "Sir, I think this is what we need for retention is a war." I said, "We need a real world." I wasn't thinking like,
Somebody heard you on your phone or whatever. And
yeah, well, like we did a lot. We were doing things like non-combatant evacuation orders.
Okay.
When was that in the Congo? Our 3rd battalion ended up doing that one. We were all mad they got to do it. We didn't. We went to a JRTC instead.
Oh, fun.
Fort Polk.
Yeah. And that was one of those big ones as well. So it was a big deal that we were there. But they did a real world and we didn't. So, but he goes, "Al, we don't really need a war." I'm like, just a little one. And that'll keep everybody, feel like they're doing the job they learned.
Wow. 9/11 happens. You're in the 160th. They're already starting to decide what they're going to do. And most people have probably seen the movie 12 Horsemen, but heard about 5th Group's ODA 595. So what if you haven't seen that, then go watch the movie and everything else. But we'll get into a lot of what happened and certainly your perspective. But I'm curious more about, all right, we see the 5th Group's perspective about how they got the information, what they were looking at. What was your perspective? How did you guys get read in, and what were you guys perceiving as you went into this mission set?
Well, so the book's 12 strong.
12 strong, yeah.
And, they have another name for it as well. The horse soldiers.
Yeah. Did I just call it 12 Horsemen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, there's 2 different copies of the same book. They just recovered it when they did the movie. But, so I was the lead pilot for B Company, 2nd of the 160th, right? So they call it an SIP, Standardization Instructor Pilot. So I was like the chief pilot, if you will, and of the company. And I got moved across the street to the headquarters to be the battalion SIP, which I did not want to do, but I got dragged across.
Would that be the equivalent of like a Mike Golf? You would think, like the lead, like in the armor sense. Like he's like the subject matter expert. For the weapon system
a master gunner.
Yeah. And also as a flight lead, so anything that comes up, I'm the planner, I'm the briefer, and I lead the actual mission.
Yep.
And there's 5 or 6 of us, and so I'm across the street. The next guy, Andy, moves up to take my position, and then we're down at JRTC, and I'm like a loner, right? So I fly with them to keep my hours, but I don't really belong to them. I belong to the colonel. And we get down there, the towers get hit, and the colonel and I drive back to Fort Campbell from Polk. We rented a car because nothing was flying. And we get up there, get a brief on what's going on, and the next day I'm in Tampa. We drove down to Tampa with a team of planners. And what's interesting about that is 5th Group was using a very Cold War model of planning, isolation, right? So they're one room over from me. I don't know it, and they don't know I'm over there. Think of the questions we could have posed to each other, right? Or helped each other out. And I'm there to plan personnel recovery. So the air crews that are going to bomb it, that kind of stuff, if they go down or reject, I'm going to take a team of Air Force BJs and go rescue them, right? So we're sitting on alert. And the mountains there are just, the elevations and the terrain were something nobody had expected. I mean, even our performance planning doesn't go as high or as hot or high as cold as it ended up being. We had to interpolate or extrapolate with the charts. And so we go over to Afghanistan. We were there before 5th Group, actually. So we were maybe the first week of October, maybe the last week of September. It's kind of cloudy as to how that played up. We took 21 C-17s, brought 4 Chinooks over, and 3 DAPs, the direct action penetrator, the armed Blackhawks. And we built them up, and we waited while the bombing campaign happened. And we had competition. The MH-53s were down in Pakistan, so the Air Force Special Operations Aviation was our big competitor back in those days, and they don't exist anymore. they just
they got put out of business.
They did. And but so it was a big math problem. All right, if somebody goes down on this mountain, how long will it take us to get there, and how much gas do we need, and what kind of a payload can you carry? And there was no electronic planning software at the time for that. It was all paper charts and calculator. And we would have, we devised a couple of ways to come up with an answer pretty quick. And then the Air Force would beat us time-wise. Like we do a planning exercise, like, all right, let's see how long it takes. And we would guarantee that the Chinooks up north and TF Dagger could launch N plus 30, right? So notification of a crash, plus 30 minutes we could be in the air. And the Air Force was like, we can do N plus 25.
It's like, name that tune.
Yeah, and so the colonel's all over me. Al, you got to get faster. And I'm like, I can't get any faster.
What was the reason why you thought that you couldn't?
Well, I couldn't. I mean, I
literally just.
Well, you couldn't move that fast.
Yeah.
Because you had to determine the elevations and the maps back then. I mean, these were paper maps. This isn't like a computer.
Yeah.
And you're having to evaluate all the spot elevations and stuff, and to do it. Because what we were worried about was in Colorado the year before, one of our Chinooks was landing to the top of a pinnacle. It was about 12,500 feet. And the rotor drooped, like the rotor speed slowed down, and the generators kicked offline, and they essentially crashed on top of a snow-covered hill. And there was no warnings, no alerts, no nothing, right? And what it turned out to be is a condition called NG top out. So it's the gas producer of the turbine engines couldn't produce enough power. So, but because it didn't produce enough power, it didn't get hot enough to trip any of the alerts.
Because of an elevation issue at that point?
Yeah. So now we had to be aware that, performance planning is kind of an educated guess anyway. So we had to put a little bit of a buffer in there, because what we didn't want to do is get into some box canyon at a hover and then the rotor droops because you're going nowhere but down. So that's why, in good conscience, I couldn't just throw a number out there.
But see, they hadn't had that experience.
No.
And so what happened allowed you guys to at least to plan for all contingency,
right.
operations.
And they were coming out of Pakistan. The mountains weren't as big. So we had to get across the Hindu Kush, and they didn't have to.
And they're,
but their aircraft couldn't hover at most of the conditions in Afghanistan.
And that's why they're not here, folks.
That is why they're not here.
Now, I've always heard that's the reason the Kai was never worked in Afghanistan, was because of elevation issues.
Same with Little Birds, the MH6s from the 160th. They could use them in a couple of different locations, down in Kandahar, out near Kaust.
Maybe out west towards the desert and stuff like that, but anything east.
And they couldn't get there on their own. They had to ride in on a C-130, and they go out and they do a couple operations. And, it's a great aircraft for what it does, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's slow. It's underpowered. But boy, if you're looking for somebody to put some rockets on target, they're the guys.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that was the reason why.
That was what we were always told, is we had obviously 64s, we had 60s, and then the 47s were over there. They were prominent, and then the crazy Russian Jinglebird guys that just kind of teetered all over Afghanistan. Those are the 4 birds you would see mostly.
Yeah. it's like, so in Vietnam, you saw the Huey,
Right.
right, is everywhere. When you see Afghanistan footage, it's always a Chinook.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's the only thing that can fly in almost all the conditions. And we had to, in the early days, the Taliban had all the key low terrain in the passes. So we had to go over the big mountains. And so we had to use oxygen and, stuff like that other units, they might talk like they use it, but except for the guys in Alaska or maybe Fort Lewis, we were the only other people using it in helicopters.
So in the movie, it shows the Chinook pilot, having to get up about 25,000 feet, I think it was, or whatever in that elevation. Were you guys doing a lot of oxygen runs and everything and practicing prior to this whole thing kicking off with Task Force Dagger?
Yeah, actually, a funny story. So remember I said we needed a war?
Yeah.
So we were setting up a unit in Korea, right? Echo Company 160 SOAR. And they took half of our company's helicopters, right? Because one company does JSOC support, and the other one does the rest of the Army's special operations. And so they cut our unit in half, right? So they took our 12 aircraft, made it down to 6, and they swapped the airframes around so that all the ones that went to Korea had like 0 time on them, if you will. Like they could go and just fly, for 2 years before they had to work on them. And they left all the ones with us. So we had like one helicopter that was flyable, and the rest were all in the hangar being torn apart and inspected on a phase maintenance. So what are we going to do? And at the time, our area of responsibility was the Middle East, right? So we did, Egypt and Qatar and all that stuff. We did all those big exercises like Bright Star and, things like that. And now we weren't big enough to do it. So they gave it to 3rd Battalion, 3rd of the 160th, and we didn't have a mission. And they were talking about, sucking us into A company and just making it a bigger company. And we're like, no. So I came up with this idea, and I called it the Bravo Project. So the commander, Joe, we'll call him, disagrees with me. He thinks he came up with the name. If he's listening, yeah.
Whatever you plagiarize it is yours, or you'll give him credit. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's that first chapter of the book where I'm arguing with the guy. That's him.
Okay.
And so I'm like, all right, we're going to call it the Bravo Project. And what we're going to do is we're going to go do counter-drug operations with 7th Group in South America. And he threw me out of his office. I said, think about it. As I'm getting thrown out, we can self-deploy. We don't have to worry about the Air Force carrying us, like going to Europe or something. And he said, get out of here, you stupid. And next day he goes, men, we're going to do this thing. I'm calling it the Bravo Project. Right? And we're going to do that. I was like, hey, thanks. But anyway, so what we did is we got permission from the operations guy, the S3, to go out to Fort Bragg and talk to 7th Group and say, hey, look, we got some Chinooks. We'd like to come down and do some stuff up in the Andes Mountains and all this other stuff. And they're like, yeah, great. And so we go back, and the S3 says, what do you mean they want you to come? Because I didn't think you'd be successful. We were kind of insulted. Like, really? We're a bunch of warrant officers whose job is to plan worldwide deployments. So he goes, look, I'll tell you what. He goes, you can go to Central America because they already have Chinooks there. You can kind of blend in down in Sotocano, I think it was. And I was all right. But we can go to South America if we do this right? And he's like, yeah. So we started training for doing stuff in South America, really. The Andes Mountains. So we had to have oxygen. We reevaluated what we considered threats, because now you don't have radar-guided munitions. Now you've got, booby traps and mines and RPGs and heavy machine guns and stuff. And we actually went out to Fort Carson, Pinyon Canyon. So we were doing our mountain training up there in oxygen, landing in the snow and such. And he got a tank, an M1 tank is out there, right? And I came down, I landed next to it, shut down, went over, said hi. And the tank commander was a E6. And that guy was super sharp, well-spoken, very proud of his tank. So he showed us his tank. And I'm like, hey, so the commander here says I should worry about you, shooting helicopters. And he goes, hell yeah. He goes, what do you think kills tanks? I go, other tanks? He goes, no. He goes, artillery and helicopters. He goes, so yeah, we practice. I'm like, all right. So now we're going to do a little game, right? I'm going to try to sneak up on him and get by him. And I could sneak up on him, right? I mean, I just dropped down into the little, moguls and swales of the stuff, and I'd do 70 knots, and I'd speed up to like 150 and just fly right by him. And all of a sudden, I'd hear laser, 6:00. He just slewed around and shot me in the ass. And no matter what I do, I could not get past him.
It's a good tanker. Good tanker.
Yeah. But so what that did is it gave us a whole new idea of threat assessment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So, whether it's, like I said, artillery, RPGs, which is what took me out of the sky, as an RPG. But, that tank commander really impressed me.
So were you doing high elevation and pushing the helicopter at that point?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But, we've been doing that since the 90s anyway. We're always going up to Colorado in the mountains because the SF guys, 10th group, had snowmobiles.
Yeah.
Call them MOSTs. Right? I don't remember what that, mobile over snow transport or something. And they're heavy when you're going up to 14,000 feet. And we'd go land in the snow cloud so you can't see. And you've got a little video game you play in the cockpit. It's called a hover page. And it's got a little circle and a line and a little crosshair. And you have to make all three of them line up to be either steady, at a hover and come straight down. And the crew chiefs can usually see straight down, but you can't see in the cockpit. And the sand is the same way.
So you're like sphincters, like,
Yeah, you're sucking seat cushion. Yeah. And luckily we had these nice black sheepskin seat cushions.
Oh, nice.
They come back out of the trees.
The first ones I seen of those actually were in a taxi cab in Germany when I arrived in Germany in like 1982, and I get in this taxi cab, and it's cold as all get out, and it's got that nice sheep, fluffy. You feel good. First time I ever rode in a Beamer or a Mercedes as well. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. Those were hot.
So we were doing all this training that we were doing for South America. The Andes Mountains are bigger than the mountains in Afghanistan, right? And one of our crew chiefs' father was the command master chief of the USS Enterprise, I believe. And they had just undergone overhaul of the engines or the reactors or something. And what they were going to do is they were going to do a cruise, like a shakedown cruise, and they were going to go around South America. And he had arranged it where we were going to go on that ship, and we were just going to go around South America doing training missions, And so we were, training with the Navy, which we did a lot of shipboard operations as well. And when Afghanistan happened, we had some experience with the power limits and the oxygen use and all this other stuff that had we not trained up for the Andes Mountains and the counter drug stuff in South America, we wouldn't have been as proficient. We'll still have toyed with it, but the proficiency was great. We also went to Kuwait 2 years in a row when Saddam threw the nuclear inspectors out. Mm-hmm. So that was in 99 and 2000, I think.
Oh, when he denied the UN resolutions?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we went over to help enforce that. Yeah. And we ended up not doing anything because he capitulated. But then we stayed for another 7 months to support Southern Watch, which was the no-fly zone enforcement. And every night we flew. Every weeknight. And some weekends we had nothing else to do, so we would go do a mission where we would, we had the SAS with us as our ground force, so we would go do a hostage rescue, simulated, and then we'd hit a tanker on the way there and the way back. We had our own MC-130s, so that is probably the most proficient I've ever been in air refueling with those 2 years. And when it came to Afghanistan at the high altitudes, that became a real big deal because we in the community had decided at 6,000 feet above sea level was as high as we wanted to air refuel because aircraft doesn't handle quite the same. And all of the incidents we had where the probe or the rotor hit the drogue, the
little nozzle that comes out.
It's like a hose that drags a donut shape.
Yeah, and it's kind of going in the wind, flapping.
But every time we ever hit one of those, our unit, it was always above 6,000 feet. So it was kind of like that unwritten rule, we don't air refuel above 6,000 feet. Well, there's no land below 6,000 feet where we were operating, So we were going to have to air refuel at like 12,000 feet. We didn't even know if that was possible. Mathematically it was, but practically was it. So when we get to Karshi-Kanabad, which is TF Dagger. So that's Uzbekistan, just north of Afghanistan. The very first thing I do when my aircraft is built up is the MC-130 and I go out at night, and we start out at 4,000 feet, 5,000 feet,
Nice.
6,000, and we just keep going until we know that the highest we could possibly air refuel based on the terrain was about 12,000 feet.
That's an AGL at that point. So sea level, you're looking at.
Well, it was MSL, right? So you're still talking. Well, where we were going to air refuel at 12,000 feet was going to be like 400 or 500 feet above the ground.
Okay.
Right, like just high enough to do it. And we went out and I did it at all those altitudes. I came back with thumbs up and said, "Hey, as long as you do it slow and easy, no big deal." You know what it turns out is guys were just back, in the early 90s. They were taught a little bit more aggressive manner of movement to contact, and because we did all that air refueling in Kuwait, 2 years in a row. I mean, 7 months of every night flying air refueling. You really get the nuances, and you kind of like I just bring it in and give a little kiss.
All those guys want to get in there quick, get it over with.
Yeah.
Just got to go nice, smooth.
Yeah, because the problem is that the probe tip, the refueling probe tip on a Chinook is beneath the rotor system, the forward rotor system. So if you kind of ease up on the drogue like a Blackhawk would, the thing could bounce up and hit the rotor, right? So they would move as fast as they could to get to it. Like you said, they were kind of scared of it hitting.
But the tip that I've always saw the tip. Maybe I'm thinking about something else. What's the big rod that goes out underneath the?
That's it. That's the refueling probe. Yeah.
But that's low. That's before the below the cabin, right?
Well, but it goes on a Chinook. It's a fixed length, right?
Like 20 feet or something like that, or 10.
Yeah, it was about 19 feet something. But the rotor blades are 30 feet.
Yeah.
Oh. And then you got to worry about the pitch.
The drogue is actually underneath the canopy or the drip line of the rotor blade coming into that stick.
Right. And so once it's on the probe tip, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's no big deal.
So you'd have to worry about the nose of the Chinook and no erratic, so some stability had to be there, and then make sure that the pitch didn't get down. Right. And then you've got the factor of the wind and the...
Oh, yeah, there's all kinds of things there. And,
yeah.
So there's like a 15-foot window up bottom to top.
Yep.
And then you got to make like a 10-foot window from into probe to into rotor.
Right. So you go about 10 to 15 feet out, level with the drogue, lined up. You got to line up the probe, and it'll move around, and you watch the wings, because the wings will move before the drogue does. And, it's tipping back and forth and pitching up and down, and you're watching that. And some nights it's like glass. It's super easy. And other nights, it sucks.
Now, the responsibility of the pilot on the other end, flying the, I guess, what is it, the KC-135?
130, yeah. And their job is to hold speed and heading and try to hold it as steady as they can.
So the onus is on you.
Yeah.
He's just pulling something, and you got to make it happen.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, that's really cool.
And like I said, sometimes you got it, sometimes you don't. Like I was better from the left seat. So the probe is on the right. And so the guy in the right seat has all the advantage. He can look right down the probe and see it aligned. The guy in the left seat has a little bit of a parallax. He's got to imagine where the probe is. But I did it so much that I was happier to do it from the left seat than the right. I felt like there was too much pressure in the right seat. Like, how could you screw up in the right seat?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you're looking down the probe. But, that's not true. But if you're in the left seat, it's like, dude, why can't you get that? You're in the right seat. You want to do it? And you go do it. And they're like, yeah.
So when did you guys get heads up then? For ODA 595, was it that you heard about that prior to going over, so you were building up, or for Task Force Dagger, or when did that combination? Yeah.
So Task Force Dagger for us was always about personnel recovery for the bomber crews.
So that's all it was.
We didn't know anything about the SF initiative with the UW campaign, right? Unconventional warfare. So we were working for an Air Force colonel doing the personnel recovery.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, fifth group shows up. Like, one day we get up and there's an isolation facility, a bunch of tents with barbed wire around it, that wasn't there like when I went to bed. And it's like, what the hell is that, right? And then like, Al, you need to get over here and brief the new colonel. I'm like, what new colonel? is Colonel Mulholland, 5th Group Commander. And so, I had this map that I called the Pretty Map, right? I had NEMA make it, and it's now NGA, right? It used to be NEMA. And it's the only thing of its kind. I wish I could find that thing. I mean, I don't know where it went, but that thing made all the difference to explain, because prior to Afghanistan, everybody was used to what can I carry and how far can I carry it, right? So we do what we call coffee can rings, like your emblem here, right? A big circle that represents on a map 250 miles, right? I can go 250 miles, loiter for 15 minutes, and come back 250 miles and carry 40 people. In Afghanistan, that's not the case, because you may have a piece of elevation that's 12,000 feet, and a quarter mile away, it's 3,000 feet. Big difference in what I can carry there, right? I mean, in one sense, I can carry 70 people, and the other one I can carry 5, right? Which is the whole thing with the Red Wings, why there was so few SEALs on the QRF aircraft to go help those guys. So anyway, these people would come in, they'd say, well, I want to know how come you can't carry, 50 people or whatever like you do back home. It's like, well, in Kuwait, I could do that for you. I could tell you, I could fly to Baghdad, do 50 minutes, come back, and I could carry a Humvee and 15 guys, right? I can't tell you that here because I don't know. And the Pretty Map was how I was able to show them, because it was colored in DTED, Defense Terrain Elevation Data, I think they call it. So everything above 12,000 feet was red. Everything that was, between that and 9,000 feet was amber, and, that kind of thing.
It was a heat map that showed elevation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Three-dimensional.
Nope. Well, it was sort of topographic.
Yeah.
And it was groundbreaking for its time, right? This guy handmade this map for me.
Oh.
Right? I mean, he put all these elements together. It took him like 2 days. And we just roll it up and lay it out. It's
Didn't have any overlays or anything on top of it?
this was, a general would come in. I want to know why you can't just do coffee can circles like you do in wherever.
Yeah.
And we'd lay the map out and go, well, sir, where it's red, I can carry 5 guys. Where it's green, I can carry, the whole spiel.
That was cool.
And we did that from Mulholland, right? Colonel Mulholland, and he looks at me and he goes, damn, that's some information I really could have used about 2 weeks ago. And that's when I found out they were in the next room down in Tampa.
Oh, shit.
If they'd have just brought me in, hey, 160th guy, can you come talk to us for a minute? But they were keeping it a secret.
Yeah.
Isolation.
And that's because at that point, they actually dropped them 40 kilometers or 40 miles off target or something like that, wasn't it? No?
Not that I know.
Okay.
Like, we never put anybody off target. And the cool thing we always did was whenever I put a ground force in, I store the location, right? It's a little button, store. And, we also have a video VHS tape back then, running, which has the position on it. So if I came back for the after action review and somebody, you put us off target, really? Well, let's take a look. Oh, look, it's right on those the coordinates you gave me. Yeah, it sure looked farther. Especially, we used to do these different types of infills. You had to the X, to the Y, and an offset, right? And to the X just meant you were landing outside the building, right?
Yeah.
And in order to do that, we had rules that we had set that you had to have rotary wing casts. So Apaches or DAPs or Little Birds had to go with you to the X, right, to defend you while you're down loading troops. And if you couldn't get those, you could use an F-15 E or an AC-130, but you had to land 300 meters and out, right, so outside of effective rifle range. And just so happened one day I was in Iraq and I was working with Delta, and the guy says, all right, I want to go right here. I go to the X, and he goes, no, it's not the X. We don't have rotary wing casts. This Y intersection over here. I said, oh, not the X, but the Y. And we played it up, going to the Y, and it actually stuck. And now we actually call it the Y. Right?
Yeah.
And then the offset is you put them, 5 to 10 kilometers away, and depending on the conditions, they might even hear you, the bad guys, right? But by the time everybody gets their act together and they walk there, you can watch on the ISR feeds, the bad guys on target. Well, they'll hear a helicopter, they'll get alert. They'll be on the parapets of the roof with their rifles out, and everybody's woken up. And then as time goes by, it's sling arms, then the rifle's leaning up against the building.
Off, the
They're smoking a
Sandman
cigar.
comes, we start
Right.
leaning over.
Right? And then they go to sleep. And right about the time the guys get to the last
There's a charge on the door and things go.
So that was that.
Wow. What was, after Task Force Dagger and everything, or after that was all complete, what was, outside of some of the things you just pointed, what were some of the things that you guys took away from that you knew then could start really helping you in the war going forward?
Well, the one thing we haven't even really talked about is the terrain following radar. Right, I talked a little bit about it in Knoxville with a guy that didn't like that we didn't have tents. So this piece of equipment will allow the aircraft to fly in instrument meteorological conditions, so you can't see out the window, at 100 foot, 300 foot, or 500 foot clearance altitude, right? So what that means is I can fly, imagine driving your car down the interstate in a serious fog bank, right? You can't see out the window. But your, what do they call that now? The adaptive cruise control can still see the lines.
Yeah.
It'll still drive it, right? Until it doesn't. But back then, I mean, the aircraft wouldn't do it for you. It gave you a little cue. As a matter of fact, those coins I gave you,
yeah.
If you look at so that's an attitude indicator, right, from an aircraft, and look to the left side, there's a little diamond.
Yep.
Okay, that is a TFQ. So the power is your left hand, right? It's called a thrust control, or a collective in a normal in a single rotor helicopter. So that diamond will trend up and down slowly, right? And that will keep you on whatever altitude you've set it at. So let's say 500 feet above the ground, right? So as long as I'm 500 feet above the ground and it looks out about 10 miles and it sees a mountain and it goes, oh, you're about 10 miles from this mountain. Based on the performance characteristics of the aircraft right now, you need to start a climb now. And that diamond will go low and turn into an inverted triangle, which just represents pull power. Mm-hmm. So you pull the power until you're in a climb that will clear it, and then it goes to a diamond, right? I mean, this is all, months of training just to learn how to do it. But so you're playing a little video game, following that cue to stay above the terrain, right? So we learned how to use that. So in peacetime, it was a general officer signature to allow you to do that for real. Like you could do it in the flight simulator, and you could do it with night vision goggles, where when a guy would flip his goggles up and follow the cue, but the other guy was a safety pilot, essentially. If you were going to hit something, he'd just take, I have the controls, and that would be that. But now this is for real. And the problem with this damn thing is sometimes it reboots unexpectedly. So I think you're about to make an important phone call and your iPhone locks up, right? And you're like, damn it won't. And you got to reset your iPhone. Well,
yeah.
That's what happens here, except your life, and all you can do is climb as high as you can go and as fast as you can go. We used to say, climb like your life depends on it, because it does. But we learned how to use that. The Horse Soldiers infil, that's how I got there, so I didn't actually go to 25,000 feet on that mission. They got that off on the story.
Yes.
That was a following mission. It was a Casevac, where my whole crew was hypoxic, and it was me and one crew chief were on a different oxygen system, and we did it all ourselves, and everybody else was like drunk.
Oh God.
Yeah. And so in that case there, it wasn't a 25. It was
like 12, 13,000.
Okay.
But I was carrying the whole team. So originally I was supposed to carry half of the ODA in one aircraft and half in the other. But in order to do the ODA 555 triple nickel, they needed 3 Chinooks to do it, because they were going over bigger mountains.
Yeah.
So they had less fuel. So they had to carry
less people.
So I got stuck with carrying the entire team, which meant that I had to air refuel in and out, which is something we always tried not to do.
Yeah.
But that became the norm. Get air refueling when you need it. If you can't get on the hose, you land in the middle of the desert, pull security, and someone will fly gas out to you.
Good Lord.
Which happened to me once. The tanker was a no-show.
Wow. No.
Wow.
It was, we had Papa models out of the 8th SOS, and those guys were awesome. The best tanker sport I've ever had. They got pulled away to support the 53s down in Pakistan, and they sent Talon 2s instead, right? So Talon 2 is basically the same aircraft, but it has a smaller fuel capacity. And they're combat Talons, right? What that means is they like to do drops, drop supplies and stuff like that. And they prioritize the drop over fuel. And
how nice of them.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they realized we'd run out of gas, but still.
Oh my God! So, was it as depicted within the movie that it was kind of jumpy and in the whole bit? And,
No, it was cold, so they tried to depict that in the movie.
Yeah.
With the snow coming in the window. I mean, those guys were frozen. I mean, you could turn the heater on, but the doors are open because the miniguns are hanging out.
Mm-hmm.
And they did. It's funny. I talked to Jerry Bruckheimer at the premiere. We had a little icebreaker with the actors and the ODA and the pilots. And I was having a drink with Jerry, and I was like, hey, I hope you didn't make us look bad. I said, every time I see a special operations helicopter pilot get shot at, they freak out and crash. Like The Rock, White House Down, or whatever,
Yeah.
It's like these guys are flying so low, they trip a traffic cam. They're that good. And then the first round, they're shooting at us. Yeah. And they crash into each other. It's like, and he goes, I think you're going to like it. He goes, but keep this in mind. He says, we made a movie, not a documentary. It's like, okay. So if you approach it with that aspect, right? And then, they didn't show very much of the Chinooks in the movie, but in the deleted scenes, there was a lot more of
I love when you're talking about that. You mentioned that off air.
Yeah.
And I will say this, that the 160th Chinook that they did when they did the medevac, the dust off out of there, that was probably the most pristine looking helicopter I've ever seen. I mean, everything that was shiny, could be.
That's because it was a brand new MH-47G.
I mean, it was just so clean.
Yeah. The first Chinook I got on, there was a blow-up doll on the jump seat, and it was just disgusting. It was stuff hanging everywhere. And it was just.
But you know what they did though is the crew chiefs that set that aircraft up for the movie. So that was the 160th that did it. And the pilot that was flying it would call me every day. And he'd say, Al, why did you do this? Or why did you do that? They want to know for the thing. And I was like, well, I didn't go to 25,000 feet on that mission. We didn't have to use oxygen. We went to 12, maybe 13. And he's like, well, when did you go to 25? I was like, 2 nights later. But that was on the Hindu Kush, not over here. So the big thing with the two different flights is that, the one that went to the mountains that same night, they had to encounter bad weather. Like I had a sandstorm, they had snow, ice, rain, that kind of stuff. So they were more likely to die as we sat around with our gallows humor. It's like, hey, you're going to die from running the mountain, and I'm going to die a surface to air missile, because I've got to penetrate the air defense. And my buddy Andy was the other flight lead, and we would go back to the bunker after a couple of nights. And he had a bottle of bourbon he got from the CIA. And he goes, what do you think? I go, I think we're going to die. Like, in the next mission or two. He goes, yeah, we're screwed. But we did this off on our own so nobody would hear us.
Wow.
Because in front of everybody, we're like, yeah, we're going to do this, and then we'd meet. Oh, man, we're screwed.
If you were the pilot that brought him in, were you also the guy that came in for the dust off?
No, it didn't happen quite that way. But we
damn
were.
It. See, that's what I hate about movies, right?
But we did, when Mike Spann was down there, he got killed in the prisoner uprising at the Dostum's headquarters, the Kwali Jungi. I was the QRF for that, and that was like a flight of 4 plus 2 DAPs. So that was a little bit different. It was actually a little more exciting. Than they did in the movie. And we did a lot of CASEVACs. That's probably one of the most rewarding missions you could do, to fly and save some guy that isn't going to make it.
Yeah.
And he makes it,
Were you engaged during one of our old co-hosts is Kat Kalin. She's off doing great things and got her master's degree in psychology and getting a doctorate degree right now and all that kind of good stuff, and quite busy being a mom, but she was with the original CSTs embedded with the 75th Ranger Regiment, early GWAD days. Were you there at that time frame servicing those guys?
Yeah. I didn't really service them. there were different times where we would do resupplies, ash and trash kind of stuff, because somebody had to do it, right? And in the early days, there wasn't a lot of infrastructure. You had Mi-17, which was the agency bird flying around, and us. It was because the weather was terrible. And so we would land outside the CSTs. Like if we put the, typically it'd be the Rangers. Put the Rangers in somewhere. They were on target doing their thing, and we'd go sit, 20 minutes away or 10 minutes away at a CST. Just sit outside their gate, keeping them awake with the aircraft. With big turbine engine.
Yeah,
they're trying to sleep. But that was my exposure to the CSTs. Every night.
Love
every
it.
night. It was the same thing. Put the ground force in, go back and wait for CASEVAC, or exfil.
Yeah.
And in the particularly hot areas, CASEVAC is always hot. Like I would have these big arguments between our flight medics, the PJs, and we had this team of doctors called an SRT, a surgical resuscitation team. It's like a nurse, the anesthesiologist, a chest guy, and I don't know what else they had, but these guys could crack your chest in the aircraft. And but I'd be like, I'm not taking you on target. You can ride in the other Chinook. We'll go get them with our medic, fly 2 kilometers away, set down and transfer. But I'm not flying 4 freaking specialists onto it. I said, do you know what happens on a CASEVAC? We're getting shot at the whole time. There's RPGs flying overhead, heavy machine gun. We are the target. It's like they shoot somebody. Like, oh, here comes the helicopters. And so those were always exciting times.
Can you talk about what one of your toughest mission was up until you got out in 2012?
The toughest mission, I can honestly say, was Red Wings. It was the Marcus Luttrell thing.
Yeah.
So we had a bunch of Chinooks in country at the time. I think about 7 or 8 of them up at Bagram. And the Marines were doing an operation called Red Wings, and they needed somebody to observe for Ahmed Shah, to try to establish pattern of life in this little village, so we knew which building to hit, and if people run out of the building, which one's likely to be him, kind of thing. And so they put a team of SEALs in, and I was supposed to be doing what they call Quick Reaction Force, QRF, and I was the oncoming QRF. The outgoing QRF was the 3rd Battalion guys, and they were supposed to hand over to me at, let's say, 10 o'clock in the morning. So I get up, I come in prepared to do my stand-up brief, and everybody's watching the big screens in the JOC. And I'm like, what's going on? Oh, we launched the QRF. I'm like, what? It should be me. And he's like, no. Major Reich was in here already. They were already dressed. They got in here, half hour before you could. So I'm like, all right. So I'm drinking my coffee, watching, bringing the SEALs in to rescue the SEALs. Mm-hmm. And I watch them get shot out of the sky while I'm drinking my coffee. It's like, oh, crap. Is that what I think just happened? I'm like, yeah. So I run down to the aircraft now. I'm the secondary QRF, and the DevGru SEALs come with me, and we are hauling ass down there. I'm doing about 150, 160, which at that altitude is screaming. And I don't know what I'm going to do because there's no place to land. That's the reason they got shot down.
Yeah.
And so I'm just thinking my mind is racing. It's like, oh, man, I'm going. Maybe I should slow down. But I can't slow down. I got to keep going. And they finally divert me over to Jalalabad to rethink what's going on. Because the Apaches that had followed them were getting shot at now. It's like, maybe we don't want to put another Chinook in there yet. Let's see if we can't set the conditions. And then while we were there, it took about a week to get everybody, maybe 2 weeks, to get everybody, all their bodies back, and Luttrell. Just night after night, we would go in, and there was only 3 ways into the valley, right? One of them had a cloud-covered mountain, and only the Echo model Chinooks, mine and one other one, could do. The rest of them were all older Delta models, and they didn't have that equipment. So we always had to go the other 2. So now it's canalized terrain. The enemy knows where we have to come from. And so I'm dealing with bad weather. I've got A-10s and AC-130s helping me out. And it's the hardest flying I ever did.
Wow.
Because I expected not to come out each time because, you're sitting ducks.
Yeah.
So when we got Luttrell, when we found out about him, I was going to go get him in the Chinook. and the H-860s from the Air Force had come up, and I mean that's their job, and they're like, yeah, and the Air Force is going to go pick them up, and I blew a gasket. I'm like, no way are they going to do this. I said, first of all, the elevation's too high; they can't hover there. And they're like, oh, we stripped the aircraft down. There's like no guns, no nothing, just people. I'm like, you guys are insane, right? I said, I'll tell you what. And then the head PJ that was planning the whole thing says, Al, I'll tell you what, you can go pick them up if you want. But we only have about a 20-minute window of weather, and we still need to get, 40 more Rangers in there to look for the rest of the survivors or bodies. He says, you pick. There's no choice there, right? I mean, I got to bring guys in. So, all right, fine, I'll plan the mission now. And the Air Force guys say, yeah. So I talked with the AC-130 and the A-10s, and I came up with this plan where they'd come in a certain direction and they'd lay diversionary fires down at a certain point. I need the biggest explosions you can give me right here. I need them to look over here, and then when they land, you can close up. And then we just move the fires around. And Luttrell in his book talks about how amazing that was. And I've never talked to the guy, but it's like, yeah, okay, that's it.
That was you.
Yeah, that was me. You're welcome. But that was the toughest flying.
Yeah, no doubt. I think we've had several guys on there. We had guys who were part of 75th, the recon and everything, detachment and stuff, came on the show and gave their perspective. And then we had very early on Dev Gru guy that was on the show that was part of the force that went there to recover the bodies and all of that. And he actually started a company, I think it's called Everett's Life, that is where now you can take DNA or certain substance and you can convert it to ink that can be used in a tattoo. So he actually had some of the debris and sand and such, which, of course, they purify it and everything else. But he had some from the site that he had put into a tattoo on his body. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And in a painting. They can actually do it also into the ink of a painting. And so when you look at this one scene of this one painting and stuff, to know that within that are people that and that kind of stuff. I mean, it really, very cool.
Yeah, no, I think that is neat.
Yeah. So you were talking off air, though, about the book and a specific scene.
Oh, it was a little excerpt that I found when you sent me his info. It was, I guess the chapter was September 10th, 2001. It was a JRTC, and it was flying under just absolute. It sounded like you guys were flying in soup.
Yeah,
in the jungles of Louisiana.
It was crap. Yeah, so that's the first chapter. You can find that on my website, alancmack.com. Right? It's the first chapter of the book. And it's the night before 9/11, and we're out at JRTC, crappy weather. I talk through, penetrating an advanced air defense system, and fighting with the air mission commander. He's got one way of doing it, and I've got another, but I'm up front, and he's not. So it's hard to kind of wrangle the warrant officer sometimes.
So what happened? Tell us.
I lived.
Yeah.
But no, it just talks through some of the procedures of using the terrain following radar and how you separate a flight, get back together, how you deal with missiles. So the suite of air defense equipment in the aircraft, even back then, was fairly extensive and advanced. So, the voice warning system talking to you, and, it would say, SA6, 2 o'clock tracking, SA6, lock, and it's like you have to do a maneuver and then pop chaff, right? Because you can't, in the movies, they just pop chaff. But if you do that, it just comes out in little clumps. It's like aluminum foil strips.
Yeah.
And so you have to actually slow down and do a certain maneuver, and I can't tell you the speeds or they'll shoot me. Yeah. But anyway, it's a maneuver, and then you disappear behind that cloud of chaff, and then the radar stays on it, and they think they've got you locked up, and they fire the missile at it. And then if it does come at you, you do pulse jamming, and it's exciting.
This is better than Tom Cruise and Top Gun Maverick.
Absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
Top Gun Maverick, the jets that fly in that, are my son's unit.
Oh, cool.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah. So he just left there. He's over in Portugal now.
Oh, wow.
But all that flying was practical effects, no CGI.
That's awesome.
And I know that Tom has his license in just about every damn aircraft you can think of. And I know he does his own stunts. So that is him flying?
Well, it's him in the back seat of a two-seater. So they made it look like he's flying.
Primary,
really he's in the back seat.
Okay.
Yeah. But they're pulling the G's, the whole, when he's squinting and grunting, it's real.
Yeah. No, that was some pretty cool flying. Actually, there's some future episodes that's coming up, but there's a guy that lives in my neighborhood that runs a podcast, and he did an episode here recently about is it real or is it not real? And he used to be a fighter pilot in the Air Force, and they were talking, him and another pilot, about it. But one of the future guests that we're going to have on is a guy who was actually the only survivor of a person who was in a fighter pilot who was at Mach speed and ejected. Wow. And yeah,
that's kind of suck.
And so I'm not only am I wanting to get into the conversation about his story, but I'm really looking forward to getting into compare, contrast, even some of the stuff that was at the beginning of the movie where he got up to 10.2 or whatever, and
in the Dark Star.
Yeah. So it'll be really interesting. We'll have to talk offline because I know I know a guy who is a major right now in the Air Force. His father and I served in the Army together, and he is a flight instructor and has done most of his career, not C-130, he's been an instructor. So it'll be interesting to see if the name might end up registering with your son. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah, it's a small community. So my son's first deployment, they were over in Afghanistan, F-18. And it's a two-seater, so he's the back seat. He's the Wizzo. And his pilot had been an F-14 pilot during Operation Anaconda. So he found out, and he's like, oh, your dad was the one that got shot down? He goes, well, let's go take a look. And they flew over Tucker Gar, the mountain where we were, and a terrain feature called the Whale, which features prominently in the story, And he's like, right there. I drop bombs right here and here. So
wow,
that's
that
cool.
was kind of neat. So he got back to the boat. He sent me an email. And he's like, hey, Dad, I was over Roberts Ridge today. I was like, wow, how about that? Small world.
Yeah, definitely. So how was your transition out then? Because in 2012, height of the war still, things are still going on pretty heavy, and mission sets getting ready to start changing and such. But I mean, you've got 30 plus years, 36, 11 months or 35.
So
35 and 11.
So my wife, unfortunately, really it kind of tails back to Operation Anaconda, right? So I got shot down. CNN reported it that, 2 Chinooks, 8 people dead, right? Well, we only had 4 Chinooks, and I'm the flight lead of one of the teams of 2, so the odds are I'm that person. And my wife finds out about it, and when I got rescued, I got brought back to Gardez, and the CIA had a sat phone, and one of the guys goes, hey, you might want to call your wife. This is about to hit CNN. And I was like, I can't, because if I call, they're going to know who it is. Right.
Yeah.
And my wife,
you're like a super blackout basically at this point.
And my wife never forgave me for that when she found out, that I had done that. And so here I am continuing to deploy. I'm still, because I'm a flight lead, I'm always at the pointy tip of the spear, if you will. And she turned to opioids, prescription medicine. And then when that wasn't enough, she used alcohol. And it got to the point where she had an overdose and died. And so thank you. But it was something that happened.
Yeah.
But and then some of that's in the book as well. How I had to deal with that. But the regiment was great. They offered to create jobs for me, fly as much as I want or as little as I want, deploy if I want or don't, or just be the face of the regiment with the ground forces. But they didn't want me to leave. But I needed to change a venue. It's like everywhere I looked, it was either a happy memory, which made me sad that it was no longer happy, or it was a bad memory, and
it made it worse.
Right.
Yeah.
So I get to go up. So she dies in September of 12, and I go up to New York City to unveil the Horse Soldier Monument. In October. And at that time, the West Point Flight Detachment job was coming open to be the commander. And so I was like, you know what?
Is this before or after Rutherford?
Rutledge. He was my replacement.
Okay, so I didn't know the time.
I handpicked him actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
I reached out to him, by the way, when I made contact with you, and I was like, man, you going to be able to make the show? Because he used to be a co-host as well. For those that don't know, former SEAL that became 160th pilot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and spoke very highly of you. And he's like, oh, man, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to make that and everything. So
he's out doing better things,
Yeah.
But here I am in the city, and I'm from the Northeast anyway.
Yeah.
And my mother still lives in New Hampshire, and I'm like, this might be right up my alley, right? So I put my name in the hat for the commander's job, and I had to interview with the superintendent up there at West Point, and he picked me. So I had to go to Lakota School, which is the UH-72 helicopter, little tiny thing. It does I call it the mighty Lakota. I said, it does everything you want, but just barely. After flying a Chinook.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, so I did 3 years up there at West Point, and I met my current wife there, and the Army decided at 3 years, they're like, you know what, you got to go back to the community. You can't stay there. That's too good a job.
Yeah.
Someone else has to get it. I'm like, they were trying to get, it was a series of 160th guys, right? And they were trying to get us out of there. But so I said, well, I'm not moving. So, because they were going to send me to Bragg. And I was like, how about I just retire? And at that time, that last year, we were putting on an air show for Orange County, New York. And the county executive had just got the show, but it was supposed to happen in Coney Island, and that fell through. So they only had 71 days to plan this whole air show at a whole different venue, our airfield. And the general told me, he was a 3-star general, he's like, Al, help him out any way you can. Okay. So I helped the county executive out with whatever he needed, terrain for press conferences. We brought the C-17s over and C-130s, and the mighty Lakota was out there with them. And we made it happen, and it was amazing. And when the county executive found out that I was retiring, he said, well, I don't have a helicopter, but I got a job for you. And it's so I'm a deputy commissioner of emergency services. I run the division of emergency management. So it's really like being in JSOC. You're dealing with fire, police, EMS, Red Cross, all that kind of stuff. So they all hate each other until something happens.
Yep.
Right.
And then they work together and they go back to hating each other again. It's just like JSOC. It's just like it. And I get to run it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, any issues or challenges, with post-traumatic stress or anything from any of the events that you went through? Because you experienced a lot.
Yeah. I think I do. There's nothing I would say, oh, I definitely have PTSD, but I do. There's times where I get into situations where I don't know what to do. Like one time I was in New York City in the wrong part of town, in a subway station, and I was afraid to pull my phone out because everybody was going to look at me like, you don't belong here, and it's like, crap. And I just started feeling, super anxious, and I didn't know what to do, because if I got on the wrong train, I was going to end up in a worse place.
Yeah.
And, the uptown, downtown, it's confusing. Luckily, I got on the right train, and that was that. But that's just a good example of when I encounter something that I am not trained for.
Yeah.
Because the one thing about the 160th is they really trained us well, and all the stress inoculation you get from SEER school and all that stuff, it all falls into place as long as you kind of know what it is. And so I do run into that, and I recognize it when it does happen. It's like, oh, geez, you get a little panic attack there. But that seems to be about the extent for me.
Yeah. Were you the senior guy then at the point of which you departed in 160th?
I was the senior.
Meaning longevity?
No.
No,
there were guys. There was a couple of Little Bird guys, Carl Meyer, Billy Cook, who legends. These guys, Carl is the guy in Black Hawk Down that's shooting his MP5 out the side while the other guy gets the crash crew member. It's like inches between the rotor blade and the buildings. And, those guys, by the time they retired, I don't remember how old they were, but, the joke was they had to use a walker to get to the aircraft. And, Billy had been shot, a couple of times. He got shot in the seatbelt, like the buckle in his seatbelt.
Yeah.
The AK round. And Yeah.
You know, in Vietnam, we had Larry Freeland on the show, who was a pilot, and he wrote a book, Chariots in the Sky, and in the book it describes a lot about the plate, and then they used another plate that they sat on and everything in Vietnam and those types of things, especially for Huey. It wasn't so much for Chinook, but curious, did you guys modify the seats or do anything in any particular way?
We had armored seats, right? So the seat pan and the back are armored, right, with Kevlar, and then you wore a level 3 chest plate,
right?
It was soft armor, right? Soft armor will stop spall and maybe pistol round if you're lucky, but the chest plate is too small on most people, right? I mean, and so what would be interesting is I'd go, let's say a hot exfil or a Casevac, right? And we're getting shot at. You can hear bullets hitting the aircraft, you know, ting, 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 thud, thud, ting.
Yeah, like a little popcorn, yeah.
And I used to sit with my arms as close, my elbows along my sides, hoping that if I got shot from the side, that my arm bones would stop the bullet from rattling around in my chest. And the first time someone said, "Why are you sitting like that?" Well, if I get shot from the side, because there's nothing in the window, you know. I mean, now they've got some clear armor there that's pretty good.
Yeah.
But we would, because of the elevations and the weight problem, we would drop the armor every chance we got. And it wasn't until General Brown, who I think was the SOCOM commander at the time, says, "You will wear your armor." You know, we're like,
yeah. Well, you always hate when those kind of orders come down, but yet the same token, it probably saved your life at some point as well by having to do that.
Well, for me, not while I was still in the 160th, not a single piece of armor had ever been hit.
Wow.
Other than Roberts Ridge. So up until that point, we would say, no one's ever even hit the armor. Why do we got it? You know. And then you talk to the guys. Greg Calvert, who was the right seater of Razor 01, got shot. I don't know 4 or 5 times right where his heart is. You know, and the armor stopped it, and he got shot in the hand. That was a whole different thing. But the armor stopped that, and then Chuck, his co-pilot, or actually the pilot in command, he's got holes in the folds of his uniform leading right up to his groin. He's like, it was headed right for home. Well, I don't know where it went.
Oh my God!
So he got shot in the femur, but he didn't get his junk.
Oh my God!
Yeah. So
wow.
It was just funny. We would one time a group of SEALs came, the DevGru guys, and we had to move them out, and a sandstorm was happening, right? And it was going to get worse. So we knew we were going to have to use the terrain following radar, and they could only weigh so much, or we could only weigh so much. So they get on the aircraft, we pick up to a hover, we check the power setting. It's like, we're too heavy. We land, we throw gear off, bullets or whatever, Nope, time to get the armor. You start throwing the armor out the side, pick it up until we're light enough for the performance to use the radar. And we just blast off into the sandstorm.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was all stuff that, over time, we learned we could do. Initially it might have taken a lot more planning. And then you memorize the area. You know that, there's a hill around this corner here. We're going to have to worry about that, Hug the right side, and the radar won't see it until the last second. We'll climb over it, kind of thing.
Man. You guys are amazing. I mean, anybody that's ever had a chance to work with 160th, Lodge 160th, obviously, in the SOF community, and I mean, to have you come on the show and share all this, man, I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for asking me to come down.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there's a whole lot left that we haven't uncovered yet, though.
Oh, there's a lot. But you read my book, Razor 03, A Night Stalker's Wars.
Yes.
It covers a lot of the stuff we didn't touch on.
And where can people find it? Amazon?
Yeah, you can get right now. It's a pre-order. Right?
Yeah.
It comes out like mid-September in the stores, but Barnes & Noble, Amazon for sure. If you happen to be in Australia or New Zealand, you can buy it there.
Okay.
Or UK.
It's already out there.
Well, it's just in pre-order.
Okay.
So there was a paper shortage, worldwide paper shortage for publishing.
Had no idea.
Yeah, I didn't either. But it was supposed to come out in July, and it just so happened it coincided with the Pentagon security review for the book.
Yeah.
Because they're supposed to take 60 days. They took 9 months, almost 10. And so I was sweating that.
You didn't have connections there to say, do you know who you're talking to? This is Alan Mack, all right?
I did, but those people, when they went and checked on it for me, I think pissed off the guy that was doing it. So they had juice, but just not enough.
Yeah. So, I know it's Alan Mack, and because you bothered me.
I don't know that happened, but I think it did.
Yeah, no doubt. So the book comes out in September, you said?
Mid-September, yeah.
Okay. And you've got we were talking offline, you've got an Instagram page, but you're getting ready to put that out public. It's right now private and everything. And that's Alan.C, isn't it?
I have to look at the Instagram one. Like I've got Twitter. I just adjusted it to Alan C Mack 2015 at Twitter. And I have a Facebook author site. Once again, Alan C Mack, author. And so I'm starting to post on that quite a bit.
I'm going to have to look and see. I want to make sure that I've got the right one because, with a lot of people follow us, I know, on Instagram. And if you're not following us, go over to Mentors, the number 4 MIL over there. But I want to say that it's, there it is, Alan Mack 2015. So that's how you can find Alan C Mack 2015. I'm sorry. And if you go ahead and you request it because it's a private account, when you do flip it over to public account and you decide to change the name or do anything like that, then people will be able to keep up with you there. Are you on Facebook with a author page or anything?
Yep, Alan C Mack author.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's where we're starting. I can adjust that one pretty easy, obviously. And I have a website, AlanCmack.com. That's it's a nice website, actually.
Yeah, it's a great website.
I have some friends that are authors. Jim DeFelice, who wrote American Sniper, and Stephen Hartov wrote In the Company of Heroes with Mike Durant. And they both saw it and they're like, I got to update my website.
Yeah. Did you do it yourself? Or
I hired somebody.
Yeah. They didn't ask for the guy's name?
A guy named Gary Williams did. He wrote a book on Michael Murphy. And he said the same things. I got to update who did your website?
Yeah, actually, I looked at your website and thought the same thing, by the way. Ours is kind of plain Jane and stuff. And it's amazing, though, how many websites actually get hit with different types of, they're trying to attack it and penetrate and everything. I don't have anything on there for you guys,
It's pictures and stories.
Right. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing and stuff? And so I end up having so many problems with that website. That I made it as simple as possible. I don't get nearly what I used to get before, but because it's so plain Jane, it's not nearly as attractive as it should be as well. Yeah. But yours is really nice. I will agree. Yeah, very, very high professional level.
Yeah, the lady that did it, we gave her a couple of examples of websites that I liked. I was like, I want it to do this and this. And we're about to add on there, I think, a link to actually buy the book, because what we haven't figured out completely is how to do a signed copy if you're not with me. Like if somebody buys the book and says, hey, I want it signed, there's different ways to get the book to me or buy it and get it signed and back and all that stuff. So.
Yeah, most definitely. So that'll be really nice when you get that thing hooked up and get it on your website. So people then don't have to go all over the place to try to find it. They just go hit your website. Mm-hmm. You'll be able to manage the traffic, all that kind of good stuff as well, a little bit better. Alan, I appreciate you coming on the show like we talked about and sharing your story. And we may reserve the right to call you back in the future so we can sit down and talk more about the aftermath of the book and some of the things that are within that that maybe right now you're not wanting to really share and dingle, but just enough to get the people to listen and tune in and buy it. But at that point, maybe we'll get a little bit deeper into the book and talk about some specific scenery or something in there that any talk of a movie or anything?
No, not that stage of the game. Mm. Although a friend of mine in Tampa was a producer out in Hollywood, and he's moved over to Tampa. He's doing radio now, and he's like, "Hey, this would probably be a good movie." I said, "Maybe an Amazon thing, might be easier to do." And he's like, "Oh, we could do that."
Who's going to play Alan?
I don't know. By the time it happens,
Tom Cruise?
No, he's too old. I was thinking Chris Pratt.
Chris Pratt, there you go.
He's got to be a good-looking guy, right?
Because he's out there doing Terminal List right now.
Oh, yeah.
Wild.
Yeah.
But he's getting old too already.
Yeah.
Because you got to have somebody play the young Alan and then the old Alan.
Yeah, I hear you. Alan, again, thanks so much for coming on.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Again. Had a blast, man. Thanks.
Yeah.